Okay. Um, so quick breakdown. So try to maintain your tribal posture the whole class, right? With the concept of three postures. The overall look, which is when the whole posture is complete. And if you want to break it down into components, we have lower body posture, torso posture, that includes your head, and your arm posture. So what does that mean? Just a real quick review on that. That means soft bent knees all the time, yeah? Soft bend in the knees, no straight legs. So soft knees, we're not down here in our squat position, but we just have a soft knees. Roll the weight back in your feet. And shoulders up, down, and around. And zip up that low ab, just like a little zipper. And that will help you keep that weight in your back heels. If you don't have your low ab engaged, you're going to tend to have that curve in your back. I have a super big curve, so I have to be very mindful of really tucking. We used to call it tucking your pelvis or tucking your tailbone, but it's not really a tuck. It's a release because you're engaging this low ab below your belly button. So when this is engaged, we're able to keep the weight back in our heels. A nice little self check-in is just see if you can lift your toes off the floor. If you can't, try to rock that weight further back in your heels. You might need to bend your knees a little more. Okay, so that's bottom part of your posture. The second part of your posture, your torso, is our very distinctive, what makes us part of our uniqueness in our dance style is our ribcage lift. And it's not done from squeezing the shoulder blades together like this. It's done from contracting these lat muscles down. They go under the armpits, connect around the hips. So if we squeeze at the chole line, at the bra line, we kind of feel our shoulder blades pushing into our back. We get that little rib cage lift. So along with that rib cage lift, when the rib cage lifts, we don't want the chin to also go up. So the chin stays parallel, head stays parallel. Right? So we've got posture, lower posture, part one. Torso, head posture, part two of our posture story. And then our arms have a posture, shoulder down, elbows up. So when we get into arm undulations and we raise our arms, we're raising our arms because our shoulders are down and depressed. And we're lifting through the elbow versus lifting like a little scarecrow through the shoulders. So that was, in a nutshell, the three components of our posture. So we would just try to work on your posture the whole next 45 minutes. And then again, a quick review of the wrist floreo, right? The wrist rotation. It's a gentle turn of the wrist. If you didn't have your fingers involved, it's a movement we're all sort of used to. In old-fashioned days, there used to be doorknobs. They were round, and you have to grab it and turn it and release it. These days, they tend to be handles. So without the fingers, it's not really that complex of a movement. And it's a slow movement, so we're going to eventually take this super, super, super slow with some of the moves we're going to be layering over. Now, when we get our fingers involved, it's when it sort of gets a little more complicated, right? So the importance of having your finger symbols on is it adds weight to your tendons, it adds shape to your hand. And Carolina always says, if you don't have your finger symbols on, it's not FatChance style. So we're going to take, so our Floreos typically start actually with wrists facing each other. With palms facing each other. We don't typically start them out here or out here. There are exceptions, and we're going to look at some of those today where we start our Floreo with the palm facing out. But right now, 99% of our Floreos are the palms facing in. And this helps us also work on our arm posture and our torso posture, because to keep our arms up, we have to engage these muscles, these lat muscles, these mid-back muscles. So if your arms are getting super fatigued, try to contract or tighten the muscles by your mid-back, by your bra line. And you should notice that the weight is now being, the muscle doing the most of the work is your back muscle, not your shoulder muscle. If you're not engaging your mid-back muscle, your delts are going to be doing all the work and your arms are going to get tired. So another thing to think about, right? But let's get back to our Floreos. So let's look at our right hand first. Thumb and middle finger are going to come together, and I'm going to turn it in a few different directions. They don't come all the way together, or else we'd be clanging our zills, right? They come close, lift the inside of the wrist bone by the thumb, turn it over. Now you relax the fingers, push the palm forward, and back to neutral. Part 1, thumb and middle finger come together. Part 2 is that lift. Part 3 is the rotation. Part 4 is push the palm. Part 5 is return. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's do one more in the right hand, then we're going to do the left hand, and then I'm going to watch your wrist Floreos for a moment. All right, so left hand. Thumb and middle finger come close together. We're lifting the wrist. Comes back down to sit on this invisible tabletop. And then release, relax the fingers, and with the fleshy part of the palm, it's like we're wiping something. So close together, lift, release, and wipe that imaginary window in front of you with your palm. Here, 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 and here. One thing to be mindful of is it's not done by lifting the arm. It's not a swimming motion, but because you're connected, your tendons from your middle finger is connected all the way down to your elbow, you will get a slight movement in this forearm, and that is okay. But we want to isolate it to the wrist as much as possible. Just do both together. And we're just doing the inward right now. And I'm going to step back so I can get into a better frame, which means having the arms wide, shoulders down, elbows up, nice and slow. And we can walk these up overhead. I'm going to back up so you can actually see my hands. It looks different when the arms are in the overhead position, but we haven't changed anything. It's just another variation of what we can do with our arms and our hands. Walking back down to parallel. And as we know, we have a position, an arm position, where the right arm is down at the hip and the left arm stays up and communicates with all the dancers what the heck she's doing. We're going to be looking at this one. And then transitioning into double or parallel arms. And then we're going to transition into arms 2, which is the right arm up and the left arm down. So the three main Floreo matchups we're going to do next are this position here, arms 2, to arms 1, oops, sorry, to arms parallel, to baby arm. I call it baby arm because we do the baby camel with this. Cool. Before we move on though, I want to see everybody's Floreos because that's like the first word we're learning, and we want to be sure that we have our foundation really solid and comfortable in our head so that we know exactly what we're doing. So things to think about when we do our Floreos. Don't let your wrist drop down. I call this stirring the water. We're not stirring the water. We're lifting that wrist without lifting the arm, and it just takes practice. And then we're going to work on reverse as well, so we don't fatigue. And we also do reverse with certain steps. So let me take myself off speaker. I wish I could figure out how to share my spotlight. I don't know what's going on today. All right, I'm going to put on a beautiful slow piece of music, and then just show me your Floreos. Start with one arm down. Start with baby arm, then move to parallel arms, then move to right arm up, left arm stays exactly where it is. So what you're going to notice in this exercise, this left arm doesn't have to move at all. It's the right arm that is moving, that is telling the dancers we're changing movements, right? Because all our movements start on the right side, whether they're slow or fast. So let me go ahead and put on a slow piece of music, and then I will watch everybody's beautiful wrist rotations, aka Floreo. Okay, so what I want us to do, we're going to match our Floreos to a rib cage rotation, to a body wave, and to a hip circle. And then we'll work on this, more on this concept first week of August. So the rib cage rotation is more, it's sort of an oblong, and this, we're not going to break down the rib cage rotation, body wave, or hip circle today, because we don't have time, but because we're focusing on the concept of introducing the concept of matching up Floreos with those 3 slow movements. All right, so just quick drill though on the ribcage circle. Back in my day, when I was one of the original members, I was in the group with the original members of FatChance, and we had ribcage circles could go either direction. It could start left, front, right, slide in, or it could start right, front, left, slide in. These days we start to the right, so that we have the same rule that everything starts on the right. In my classes, if you're following strict FatChance, you're going to start right to center, left, slide in. I give my dancers the option to do both because we do vintage as well as modern. So what does that mean for this ribcage slide? It means we're going to slide the rib, we're going to stabilize the hips and the torso with that weight planted on the ground back and the weight back in the heels. Slide the ribcage to the right. We're going to use the mid-back muscles and the ab muscles to lift that ribcage around to the front, over to the left, gently place it down and slide it in home base. So from the side, oops, let me get my hand out of the way. It looks like this. From the back, it's hard to see. That's why the wrists are really important. From the other side, it looks like this. It's a small movement. One of the things we want to be mindful of is don't release that low back. Keep everything nice and long and stable in that weight in the heels. It's a very small movement. It's just a ribcage isolation. And in our style, it doesn't sink back, so it's not a full circle. It's an upside down capital D. Slide, come around, drop, and down. The Floreos / wrist rotation, ribcage circle can be done with arms parallel or with baby arms. If you do with arms parallel, there's no arm undulations involved because it's a ribcage isolation. And this is one of those movements that starts with the wrists facing out. And it's what we call a sympathetic Floreo, which means it's modified. We're looking at the direction of this left hand. Push down, out, push down. Let's just look at the left hand for a moment, and I'll explain what's happening. Down, push, down. So the right side of your hand is the right side of your body, right? The right side, whether it's the outside, the right side of either hand is the right side of the body. The left side of either hand, the left side of the body. So we're looking at what's happening with the thumb and the baby finger as a follow dancer and as a leader. So when the wrist rotates around to the right, we're activating the right side of the ribs. When the wrist bones are pointing forward, both our rib headlights are pointed forward. So we're going here, here. When we bring the wrist Floreo, so we've gone here, 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 right, palms facing in. The left part of the hand is facing down, is active. That means the left side of the rib, the left side of the body is now the active side. And then return. So we have right, forward, left, return. Right, forward, left, return. Right, forward, left, return. Let's look at that from the back, just with the baby arm placement. Let me make sure you can see what's happening. Right, forward, left, return. We should all be at the forward, slide left, return. Right, forward, left, return. Right, forward, left, return. One more. Right, forward, left, and return. Let's do it with both arms parallel now. So again, it's really important to stabilize the lower torso because this movement can be really confusing to follow. It's much easier to follow in person because you're right there with the other person, right? You're one arm's length away. You can see that there's something happening in the upper torso and that the hips are quiet. So you know that it's a rib cage circle and not a one-armed tuxing figure 8. So it's really important for us to develop our isolation skills from torso to hip. So let's look at this with both arms parallel, same concept. The left arm is is what this hand is what we're looking at for the language. Right, forward, left, return, right, forward, left, return, right, forward, left, right, forward, left, return. We're doing just our normal inward Floreo, but now we're layering this isolated rib movement on top of it. So we're actually doing two isolations. We're doing a wrist rotation isolation and a rib cage rotation isolation. So if it feels like, oh my God, I can't even do the pat the head, rub the stomach thing. If it feels like that, that's because it is like that. All right. So again, these are concepts we're going to delve into during the coming weeks in class. The other step that we're going to look at today is our hip circle and our, I call it a Floreo, and our Floreo. Right, again, the breakdown of the hip circle real quick is that concept that we did earlier in our little warm-up. Start with the weight in the back of the heels. You probably can't see my feet. Shift the weight to the outside edges, to the left side edges. Now shift them around to the toes, to the outside edges of the right, and back in the heels. So if your feet are, if my hands were my feet, how am I going to do this? I would be having the weight in the back of the heels, shifting everything to the edges, coming to the toes, to the outside edges, and around. So it's sort of like the ground is very unstable. I call it the drunken sailor. So we're just making, again, now we're making like almost like a capital D with the hips and sliding in. So we're going to stabilize the upper torso, push the left hip out, but it's sort of back in the weight of the heels. Trace along the outside edges of the left edges of our feet. Come into the balls of the feet. Now trace along the outside edges of the right foot. Come back into the heels and slide down. And again, we're going to do a lot of breakdown on that step in the coming weeks. There's only one arm placement for our hip circle, and that is right arm at home base, left arm up. Okay? And again, it is the circling motion and the speed and where the thumb is, where the palm is, and where the outside edge of the baby finger is that tells our dancers and our brain where we are in this movement. So this is, again, this is one of those movements that starts with the palm facing out so that we can activate the right side of the body. Come all the way around, activate the right side of the body, and return. So it's like we're pushing in reverse, out, around, and down. Let me turn my back to you. You can see my hand, out, around, and down, out, oops, and down. Push out, come around, down, return. Push out, come around, and return. Out, around, return. And one more. Out, around, and return. So again, from the back, because the audience sees our movements from the front, but we only see our movements from the back of the dancer, the back of the lead dancers, or the back of the trio or the quartet or whoever we're standing behind. So that's why it's really, a Floreo turn is just a Floreo rotation, right? Just a wrist rotation. It's what body part we're isolating that tells our fellow dancers what our step is. Because if we rely just on a cue of a wrist rotation, we use this in 3 different steps, just this movement. So that's not clear enough language to say, hey, what's going on? Because we could also be using this same arm posture for the body wave, right? Which is something we actually don't have time to get into today. So the big difference between the hip circles, a body wave, and the rib cage rotation is all going to be really, the information is going to be important on what part of your body you're completely isolating, which means the other stuff is stable, and you're isolating means it's moving. The hip's moving, the hip circle's moving, or the spine is undulating, or the rib circle is moving, right? The active part is the part that we call the isolation. The others are stabilized. So let's do just a quick little drill before level 2 class kicks in. And we'll go over, follow me from the back with rib cage. I'm looking at my notes, that's why I keep looking away. Rib cage, hip circle, body wave. So again, the only parallel arms in our little drill, the only move we could do with parallel arms will be our rib cage. So that'll be one kind of heads up, right? If we have arm undulations, we know it has to be a toxine figure 8. But if it's quiet, it's going to be a rib cage circle. Okay, so hopefully that didn't confuse you, and hopefully it clarified a few things. So I'm going to put on some music, that little song, and we'll go ahead and start dancing. Now beginning, we'll dance this out for 3 beautiful minutes. Hey, turn this music off for a moment. All right. So if you have any questions before level 2